Contrast Obama-Trump. We'll take some calls, but I'm not going to book a guest for tomorrow.
Do that. Do the side by side.
Yeah, we'll do that. So I'll have a busy morning tomorrow pulling audio.
Yeah, you will. You will. Oh, boy.
But I'll do it.
Well, hang in there, you.
Will do. You too.
Yeah, I will.
All right.
Trying.
Gotta laugh. Boy, this hour flew by today, huh? I'll post David Brock's lovely letter on the blog. You can.
I read the news today. Oh, boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Bring it on!
And they're off. Less than 2 weeks from Inauguration Day, and the Republican Party is gumming up the works, scheduling 10 confirmation hearings over the next 3 days.
Battle lines being drawn. Nobody's right if everybody's wrong.
Plus, on Tuesday night, President Obama delivers his farewell speech, and Donald Trump allegedly holds his first press conference in 166 days on Wednesday, competing with 4 of his confirmation hearings. But the Democrats are already gearing up for their first big battle of the 115th Congress, health care.
Don't let us get sick. Don't let us get old.
There were impassioned floor speeches on Monday afternoon. Ed Markey of Massachusetts.
It would be tragic if we once again flood the emergency rooms of America with people who otherwise would have had health care coverage under the Affordable Care Act. If we begin simultaneously to defund the community health centers across the country and their ability to provide health care, then what we have is a cascading impact that ultimately hits those people who are the poorest, those people who are the most vulnerable. They are the ones who are caught in the crosshairs of this incredible, almost unbelievable attack which the Republicans are waging upon a healthcare system that has already transformed the lives of 22 million people in the United States.
There's a man I found could bring us all joy. There's a doctor I found could cure the boy. A doctor I found can cure the boy.
Senator Mazie Hirono of Hawaii.
I rise today to urge the Senate to pass the Hirono-Donnelly Amendment to protect Medicare and Medicaid. During his campaign, President-elect Trump made the American people a promise that he will protect Medicare and Medicaid. Today, we are giving Senate Republicans an opportunity to reaffirm this promise to the American people. But I am deeply skeptical that they will do the right thing because they are committed to repealing the Affordable Care Act, which would drastically cut Medicaid funding for the states. And the President-elect's nominee for Secretary of Health and Human Services is the architect of the Republican plan to privatize Medicare. The assault on the ACA is an assault on Medicare and Medicaid. Both of these programs can be dismantled through the language in the budget that Congress is debating right now.
Everything gives you cancer. There's no cure. There's no answer. Everything gives you cancer.
Senator Maria Cantwell of Washington.
The Affordable Care Act is much more than just what we tried to do in the individual market. It is about providing affordable coverage, but it was also about reducing costs, improving the healthcare delivery system, protecting women's health, and saving taxpayers money. So I would hope that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle will think about all of these things, about providing affordable coverage, about reducing costs, about improving the healthcare delivery system. I warn my colleagues, if you repeal this and take away the improvements to the delivery system, you are going to balloon the deficit. And that is something we cannot afford.
There was a 5-hour Democratic Senate talkathon Monday night streamed on Facebook Live, and Bernie Sanders discussed health care during his CNN town hall.
As a result of the Affordable Care Act, we said to the insurance companies, no, you can't discriminate against somebody for a pre-existing condition. And we said many other things. And it used to be there were caps on what the insurance companies would pay. We'll pay you $100,000. We won't pay more. Well, how do I pay the next $100,000? Tough luck. you're on your own. We changed that as well. I believe I speak for virtually every member of the Democratic caucus that we're going to do everything that we can to improve the Affordable Care Act. It has problems, but we damn well are not going to see it repealed and have no replacement there at all.
I'm so sick of you, so sick of me. I don't want to be with you.
That's our Bernie. Yes, on Sunday, this Sunday, January 15th, Bernie Sanders and other Democratic members of Congress, trade unions, senior groups, healthcare activists, and all of those who believe in economic and social justice are organizing a day of action to tell Republicans loudly and clearly, you are not going to get away with gutting our healthcare. Find or help organize an event near you at berniesanders.com/ourfirststand. Also, note that it's not a complete list of events, as the one I'll be going to at the Sunrise Amphitheater in Sunrise, Florida, isn't even listed. So call your Democratic representative's office and ask them for the event in your area. It's up to all of us.
Get up, stand up for your right.
And that's today's dose of What's News, written and produced by Nicole Sandler. Hear the Nicole Sandler Show live, Tuesday through Friday, 3 to 4 Eastern, 12 to 1 Pacific, at NicoleSandler.com, and on the Progressive Voices Network.
Don't give up the fight.
Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randy Rhodes Show.
Okay.
Turn up your mind.
Senator, I am worried about the direction of the Department of Justice over the next 4 years, specifically on voting rights. In light of Senator Sessions' history attacking the Voting Rights Act, will you oppose his confirmation?
I'm going to listen to what Jeff Sessions has to say. I've known Jeff for many, many years, but I have very, very strong concerns. And I think the issue you raise about the Voting Rights Act and how the Supreme Court a few years ago gutted the Voting Rights Act, and that right now in state after state, Republican states, what they are doing, this is really kind of unbelievable when you think about it. They're working overtime not to expand democracy, not to bring more people into the political process. They're trying to make it harder for people to vote under the guise of voter fraud. Thank God in America, voter fraud is very, very rare. But they're using that argument to make it harder for poor people, for old people, for people of color to vote. I consider this to be one of the most significant issues facing our country. Okay? So I will listen very, very carefully to what Senator Sessions has to say, but I share your concerns.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And of course, later on in the town hall meeting with the Bernie, he said, look, they asked him about a lot of these nominees, and he said, I'm trying to be polite, because if I said I wasn't going to vote to confirm some of these nominees, then the next question that Mr. Cuomo here would ask me is, why won't I wait until I hear what they have to say before I say I won't vote for them? I'm just trying to be polite. Yeah. All right, so today was Jeff Sessions' day. Let's see what he had to say about voting rights. Let's take it away. Amy Klobuchar, she had the topic. She was given the task to question him about voting rights.
But if you could just explain your views of the Voting Rights Act moving forward and what would happen in terms of enforcement if you were Attorney General.
The Voting Rights Act, passed in 1965, was one of the most important acts to deal with racial difficulties that we face. And it changed the whole course of history, particularly in the South. There was a clear finding that there was discriminatory activities in the South, that a number of states were systematically denying individuals the right to vote. And you go back into the history, you can see it plainly. Actions and rules and procedures were adopted in a number of states with the specific purpose of blocking African Americans from voting.
Okay.
And it was just wrong, and the Voting Rights Act confronted that. And
Yay.
it, in effect, targeted certain states and required even the most minor changes in voting procedure, like moving a precinct across.
So how would you approach this going forward? For instance, the Fifth Circuit's decision that the Texas voter ID law discriminates against minority voters, that was written by a Bush appointee. Do you agree with that decision? How would you handle this moving forward?
Well, I have not studied that.
Hasn't studied.
There's going to be a debate about it. Courts are ruling on it now, and that is a voter ID, and whether or not that is a improper restriction on voting that adversely impacts disproportionately minority citizens. So that's a matter that's got to be decided. On the surface of it, it doesn't appear to me to be that. I have publicly said I think voter ID laws properly drafted are okay.
They're okay.
But as Attorney General, it'll be my duty to study the facts in more depth, to analyze the law. But fundamentally, that can be decided by Congress and the courts as they interpret the existing law. I did vote to extend the Voting Rights Act several years ago. I thought it included Section 5, but later Section 5 was eliminated by the Supreme Court on the basis that progress had been made. And on an intrusive question, let me answer that. It is intrusive. The Supreme Court on more than one occasion has described it legally as an intrusive act because it only focused on a certain number of states, and normally when Congress passes a law, it applies to the whole country. So it's a very unusual thing for a law to be passed that targets only a few states. But they had a factual basis. They were able to show that it was justified in this fashion. So that's the foundation for it, and that's why I supported its renewal.
Mm-hmm. And I think you'll understand as you look at this issue that there are many voters, people who are trying to vote, that view some of these rules that are put in place as intrusive for them because it makes it harder for them to vote. And I think that is the balance that you're going to need to strike. And I hope, coming from a state that has such high voter turnout, that has same-day registration, very good turnout in Iowa as well, right below us, states that have put in place some really expansive voter laws, and it doesn't mean Democrats always get elected. We've had Republican governors in Minnesota, we have a Republican governor in Iowa, and I just point out that I think the more we can do to encourage people to vote, the better democracy we have. And I want to turn to another quick question on a Democratic issue, as in a democracy issue that was raised by Senator.
Okay, so there was the questioning on the Voting Rights Act, and he starts off very strong, I must say. Oh, we knew in the South that we were discriminating in a systematic, institutional way against black people voting. But now, racism is over. The Supreme Court has said racism is over. And could I just tell you something, Amy? The idea that we had laws that applied only to states where black people were trying to vote and being prevented from voting, and that these, the Section 5 didn't apply to the whole country, like in Minnesota, where there are no black people, basically. That to me was intrusive. I found that disgusting. I got to say, the Supreme Court did a good job of saying racism is over. And so there is no more Section 5. You know that this was the first election cycle that we've had without Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. This was the very first one. This last one, this 2016 one, was the first election we've had since the Supreme Court struck down Section 5, which simply said that if you were going to change voting rules or change the early voting days or eliminate the early voting days or move precincts from urban centers way out into rural America, or you were going to move departments of motor vehicles out of urban centers and way out into the hinterlands, that you would have to get pre-clearance from the federal government ahead of the election before you went and did this stuff. And only in states where there was a history of voter suppression based on race. That's what Section 5 was. And it doesn't exist anymore. And so we had this election without Section 5, the very first one. And look what North Carolina did. Look what they did. They actually canceled early voting in the middle of early voting. And then everybody had to go to court to get them to restore early voting, although some early voting days were lost. Look what they did in Alabama. They decided to have a voter ID law, but they took the Department of Motor Vehicles and they closed them. And they only moved, they took them right out of, Mobile and some of the urban centers, and they put them way out in the hinterlands so that people who didn't have driver's licenses and didn't have voter ID couldn't get to the Department of Motor Vehicles on mass transportation to get the ID from the department. See what I mean there? But what's so fascinating is his thing to her was, I really haven't studied. She asked him, well, what about the Texas Supreme Court that just recently ruled? And by the way, this was a Bush appointee, a conservative justice, who wrote the opinion that said that the Voting Rights Act, repealing Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act in Texas was a barrier to voting in Texas and seemed to him to be unconstitutional. An unconstitutional barrier that affected racial minorities in Texas. Oh, I haven't studied that. I haven't looked. Really? I thought you were doing the murder boards. How many times did I hear them say on the media, oh, they're doing the murder boards. They're grilling him. They're making sure he's prepared. He has this whole list of things he's decided not to learn, this Jeff Sessions, which I think is the takeaway from the hearings today. He decided not to learn about the impact of the repeal of the Voting Rights Act, Section 5. He also decided not to look into Russian hacking. He's not really up to speed. They didn't brief him. The FBI briefed everybody. There were public hearings. There's one going on right now in front of the Intelligence Committee. And yet the nominee for the Attorney General of the United States, current Senator Jeff Sessions from Alabama, wasn't briefed on the Russian hacking that went on by Russia favoring Donald Trump's inaugural. He wasn't briefed on that. He also said they asked him questions about, the president of the United States might have some conflicts because Deutsche Bank is under investigation and the president owes many, many millions of dollars to Deutsche Bank. And he said he wasn't aware of that situation either. Does he not even read a newspaper? I mean, I don't even know what it is. And then, okay, let me just play this one piece here and then we'll start there and I'll play you all these other audio pieces from today's hearing to back up everything I just told you, okay? You'll hear him say what I just said. But let's just get rid of this piece of audio here because he also has never looked into the independent counsel law, which is fascinating, although he's called for an independent counsel to prosecute Hillary Clinton. And on the campaign trail, as you might recall, there was a whole lock her up thing going on. And, Sessions was the first senator to endorse POTUS, Trump. So today he was asked by his side of the aisle, by Senator Grassley of Iowa, what's he going to do about the Clinton investigation? What's he going to do about it?
The presidential campaign, you made a number of statements about the investigation of former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton relating to her handling of sensitive emails and regarding certain actions of the Clinton Foundation. In light of those comments that you made, some have expressed concern about whether you can approach the Clinton matter impartially in both fact and appearance. How do you plan to address those concerns?
Mr. Chairman, it was a highly contentious campaign. I, like a lot of people, made comments about the issues in that campaign with regard to Secretary Clinton and some of the comments I made. I do believe that could place my objectivity in question. I've given that thought. I believe the proper thing for me to do would be to recuse myself from any questions involving those kind of investigations that involve Secretary Clinton that were raised during the campaign, or could be otherwise connected to it.
Okay. I think let me emphasize then with a follow-up question, to be very clear, you intend to recuse yourself from both the Clinton email investigation and any matters involving the Clinton Foundation, if there are any?
Yes.
Okay, great. So then they go on to ask him about the independent counsel law and whether or not he would appoint an independent counsel. And of course he says, I'm not really aware of the independent counsel law and I would have to study it. This was a joke. Okay, this whole hearing was a joke. All right, so let me go back to the audio clips. Okay, here, this is Senator Blumenthal from Connecticut asking him about the live and ongoing investigation into Deutsche Bank, a bank that holds millions of dollars of Donald Trump loans. This is another example of either having to recuse himself. I mean, I don't know how many issues he's going to be able to hear. I don't know if he's going to have to recuse himself from every single issue to the point where he's the most ineffective attorney general in the history of the United States. And yes, that will include Comey. But this was amazing because Blumenthal asked him, what about the Deutsche Bank investigation? How will you handle that?
The President of the United States owes Deutsche Bank several hundreds of millions of dollars. It's currently under ongoing investigation. Will you appoint a independent counsel to continue the investigation of Deutsche Bank?
Well, Senator Blumenthal, I'm not aware of that case. I'm not in any way, have not researched it or even read some of the published articles about it. So I'm totally uninformed about the merits
How
or
is this
lack
possible?
of the case. I don't know that the president is implicated simply because he's borrowed from a bank. But I would say that as Senator Lee, I think, raised in his questioning, you don't want to be in a position where every time an issue comes up, the Attorney General recuses himself. But at the same time, serious questions, when they arise, the Attorney General should recuse himself on the appropriate circumstances. And I guess that goes with the appointment of a special counsel, which is a somewhat different issue. There's been a lot of criticisms of that, but I think it's a useful tool in the appropriate circumstances.
Would you agree with me that the emoluments clause applies to the President of the United States?
Well, the emolument clause applies. I guess the dispute is, and the discussion is to what extent does it apply? And
Okay, what extent does the emolument? To the extent that the President of the United States cannot be enriched by any foreign government. That's the extent to it. Oh, this was amazing. But he doesn't know anything about the Deutsche Bank case. He has no idea. You know that we just got $7.2 billion in the first settlement with Deutsche Bank for the toxic mortgages that Deutsche Bank spread across the global markets. So how could he not know? He's on the freaking Judiciary Committee now. So here's what So he doesn't know anything about the Deutsche Bank case. He doesn't know anything about the Texas courts saying that the Section 5 of the voter ID and the removal of Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act had an unconstitutional, racially negative impact on the voters of Texas. Okay, he doesn't know about either of those. He does know that the Voting Rights Act was, needed, and now he feels it's intrusive. That he knew. He does know he'll recuse himself in the case of Hillary Clinton because he said some stuff. So, wait. I was going to go to the Russians. All right, well, we'll have to do it over the... I just don't want them to lose this train of thought of what he doesn't know. There's so much he doesn't know. It's so interesting. He doesn't know about the Voting Rights Act. He doesn't know about the independent counsel law. He just thinks it's a useful tool in some cases. He doesn't know about the Deutsche Bank case. He doesn't know about... Well, he doesn't know about the Russian hacking either. He has no idea because he was not briefed on the Russian hacking. Oh, my God. This is crazy. This is nuts that he would be qualified to be the next Attorney General after having sat on the Judiciary Committee, that he doesn't know any of these issues. You know what that means? We just learned that after 20 years in the Senate, you become a much better liar.
For a commercial-free, on-demand, whenever, wherever listening experience, visit RandyRhodes.com for your personal premium podcast today.
Now that Trump's on his way to the White House, how long do you think it's going to take him and his Wall Street cronies to completely wreck our economy? This Trump administration is greedy, full of avarice, and awful. And the damage they're going to do to the economy will become legend. They are going to make the financial crisis of 2008 look like a pool party. And once again, working class Americans, you're going to get soaked. And that's why now more than ever, it's time to diversify your investment portfolio. Gold's low correlation with stocks and bonds can help you in times of uncertainty. Just call my friends at ITM Trading today, get a free gold kit, and learn why gold survives every government, every currency, and every economic crisis. Call ITM Trading at 1-888-OWN-GOLD for guidance from their precious metals experts. They've helped tens of thousands of people navigate this market, and they have the best reputation in this industry. So call 1-888-OWN-GOLD, 1-888-OWN-GOLD.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1885. That was the day that Toynbee Hall, the first university settlement house, opened its doors to the poor and working class communities of East London. The Industrial Revolution had created a new set of social conditions, those of high unemployment and slum housing, crime, and infant mortality. The vicar of St. Jude's, Canon Samuel Barnett, and his wife Henrietta hoped to combat poverty by having students settle in with the poor and working class to provide services and fight for social reforms. They named the settlement house in honor of their friend, economist, and labor leader Arnold Toynbee, who helped to organize trade unions and establish public libraries throughout East London. In its early days, Toynbee Hall championed the rights of minority immigrants, including Jews and the Irish, developed adult education and language courses, evaluated industrial working conditions, and provided free legal advice. More aligned with liberal rather than labor politics in Britain, reformers at Toynbee Hall looked to build the health of the nation by fighting for welfare reform legislation. It became a public forum for political debates and historical societies, and blazed the path for the rise of the settlement house movement in Britain and the United States. 3 years after its opening, Jane Addams would open Chicago's famed Hull House. Other settlement houses, like the Henry Street settlement in New York City founded by Lillian Wald, would soon follow. Though bombed in the Nazi Blitzkrieg in 1940, Toynbee Hall continues its vision of a future free from poverty and its mission to support people and communities to break down the barriers that trap them in poverty in a bold, engaged, and open environment to this day.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Clear for takeoff. Randy Rhodes Air Force. Air Force. RandyRhodes.com.
Oh, there's so much going on today. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. All right, so let's just stick with the Jeff Sessions confirmation hearing part 1. They're in recess. Then they'll go back again for some more. And then tomorrow there'll be some more, except tomorrow there'll be 4 other hearings going on. And today there will be another there is another hearing. There's 2 other hearings going on. It's driving me insane to the point where even C-SPAN has said, oh, F it. I don't know what to do. There's so many hearings. It's incredible. You've got General Kelly, who's being vetted for Homeland Security today while this is all going on. And then you got the Intelligence Committee, which was my favorite, my pick of the day, which isn't being shown on mainstream media. You got to go to the C-SPAN 2. The C-SPAN 2, and I'm there, trying to record from the C-SPAN 2, and then all of a sudden C-SPAN said, oh, God, there's some, I just can't, let's just, and they cut away from the Intel hearing to go to the Sessions hearing, and then they went to the Kelly hearing, and it was like, oh, nobody knew what that, oh, my God. I have to find my Zen. Wait, I don't have any Zen. I am not that girl. I can't even quiet my mind to do yoga. So here are the things so far he doesn't know about. He doesn't know about the Deutsche Bank investigation. He swears he didn't even read the newspaper. He has no idea that the man that nominated him, the man that's going to be the next president of the United States of America, is involved to the tune of millions and millions and millions of dollars with a bank that was just sued by the U.S. government, successfully settled for $7.2 billion over toxic mortgages. And now there's another ongoing case with Deutsche Bank, and the Attorney General of the United States is going to have to pick that up. And that might, in that net, sweep up the POTUS himself. So he doesn't know about it. He says he hasn't read a newspaper article about it, just decided to keep himself nice and ignorant about it. Then he said, of course, he doesn't know anything about the Voting Rights Act or any of the courts that have found that the Voting Rights Act, as it was not applied in this election, caused numerous discriminatory practices in various states around this nation during this past election, the first election to be held in the United States since 1965 without the Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. He didn't know anything about that. He also doesn't know anything about the Russian hacking. Here's Lindsey Graham asking him about the Russian hacking.
Election. I have done no research into that. I know just what the media says about it.
Do you think you could get briefed anytime soon?
Well, I'll need to.
Well, I'll need to. Wait a minute. Got to start that over. Because I clipped it because I'm editing these things really fast today. So I took out his whole question because he went on and on with the question. But the question was, what should we do about the Russian hacking into this election? And his answer is, I only know what I read in the paper. I was never briefed on the Russian hacking. Really? How is that freaking possible? How is that possible? You are a sitting senator on the Judiciary Committee, for God's sake. There was just this massive reportage and hearings and one going on right down the hall from you at the Intelligence Committee regarding Russia. His answer is the same as it was for all those others. He just decided he's not briefed. He doesn't know anything about it.
Election.
I have done no research into that. I know just what the media says about it.
Do you think you could get briefed anytime soon?
Well, I'll need to.
I think you do too. You like the FBI?
Do I like them?
Yeah.
Some of my best friends are FBI.
Do you generally trust them?
Yes.
Are you aware of the fact that the FBI has concluded that it was the Russian intelligence services who hacked into the DNC and Podesta's emails?
I do understand that.
From your point
or
of
at least that's what's been reported, and I've not been briefed by them
on
the subject.
From your point of view, there's no reason for us to be suspicious of them.
Of their decision?
Yeah.
I'm sure it was honorably reached.
How do you feel about a foreign entity trying to interfere in our election? I'm not saying they changed the outcome, but it's pretty clear to me they did. How do you feel about it? What should we do?
Senator Graham, I think it's an insignificant event. We have penetration apparently throughout our government by foreign entities. We know the Chinese have revealed millions of background information on millions of people in the United States. And these, I suppose, ultimately are part of international big power politics. But when a nation uses their improperly gained or intelligence-wise gained information to take policy positions that impact another nation's democracy or their approach to any issue, then that raises real serious matters. It's really, I suppose, goes in many ways to the State Department, our Defense Department, and how we as a nation have to react to that, which would include developing some protocols where when people breach our systems that a price is paid, even if we can't prove the exact person who did it.
He hasn't been briefed, but even if we can, he wants the State Department on it, not the Justice Department. Oh, no. The Justice Department should never weigh in on illegal hacking. That's something, I don't know, he didn't study. He's not briefed. He doesn't know anything about cyber. He's like, 70 years old anyway. So what does he know? He can barely use his BlackBerry. And so I'll staff that out. So far he's recusing himself from just about everything that an attorney general would have to do. He's going to, appoint special counsels to investigate Hillary Clinton and special counsels to investigate Russian hacking and special counsels to investigate Deutsche Bank and special counsels to investigate voting rights violation. So far, this man has to recuse himself from just how many recusals before he's the most ineffective attorney general in the history of the United States. But this was the theme, not that you would ever know it, because the media doesn't put all these, I haven't been briefed, I'm not up on this subject, I'd have to recuse myself, I didn't read a newspaper article about Deutsche Bank, I have no idea what this independent counsel statute says. You know, they didn't put all that narrative together so that, they just were saying, well, he seems like he's doing well. He's liked by his colleagues. These were the comments I heard today. Well, he's very much liked by his colleagues. And you know what? If he's so liked by his colleagues, then factor this into this equation too. If they don't confirm him, his Republican colleagues, then he goes back to the Senate to work with his Republican colleagues who didn't confirm him for a second time, the first time, because he was racist. So Lindsey Graham, after embarrassing the crap out of him about he doesn't know anything about the Russian hacking, well, could you get yourself briefed? Could you manage to do that? He gives him a chance to say, I'm not a racist. Lindsey Graham bonds with him over the fact that they're both Southern senators. And Southern senators who are of a conservative ilk get branded as racist. So would you like to tell the people why you're not racist? In the meantime, I have to tell you that there were people in the hearing, protesters. Some of them were dressed as Ku Klux Klan members. Not the most original idea, but somebody had to do it.
I agree. I got 20 seconds left. I've known you for, 15 years now, and we've had a lot of contests on the floor, and sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't. I'm from South Carolina, so I know what it's like sometimes to be accused of being a conservative from the South. That means something other than you're a conservative from the South. In your case, people have fairly promptly tried to label you as a racist or a bigot or whatever you want to say. How does that make you feel?
How does it feel?
This is your chance to say something to those people.
This is your chance. You better take it.
Does not feel good.
This is going well.
If nothing else, I'm clearing the room for you. And I would suggest that the freedom of speech also has some courtesy to listen. So what's your answer?
Senator Graham, I appreciate the question. You have a Southern name. You come from South Alabama. That sounds worse to some people. South Alabama. When I came up as a United States attorney, I had no real support group. I didn't prepare myself well in 1986, and there was an organized effort to caricature me as something that wasn't true. And it was very painful. I didn't know how to respond and didn't respond very well. I hope my tenure in this body has shown you that the caricature that was created of me was not accurate. It wasn't accurate then, and it's not accurate now.
Well, that would be all well and good if he didn't join the Trump campaign early and as the first senator to endorse, based on the fact that Donald Trump was running not only the most racist campaign, but was a birther prior to throwing his hat in the ring for the Republican national nomination and then, the nominee of the Republican Party onto the presidency. See, this is the problem. It's not what he says he feels. It's what he does. And what he's done is say, I'm not briefed up on anything that Donald Trump may have done bad. I'm not briefed up on the Russian hacking that occurred to insert itself into this Democratic election. I'm also not briefed up on the racial significance of the lousy Supreme Court decision to gut the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Although I cheered when it was gutted. I love Scalia's ruling. I thought it was great. And now that appeals courts are saying that the result was racial discrimination again without the protections, I don't know anything about it. But he's doing well, everybody. He's doing really well. And he's very well liked. And, he's very well liked. So much so that they can't wait to get rid of him. Because if this man isn't confirmed by the Senate, then he will go back and become a colleague with these people that didn't confirm him. So, of course, he's getting confirmed, even though he seems to be the least informed attorney general on any issue, including racial issues, the issue of Russian hacking, the issue of Deutsche Bank, the independent counsel law, things that would actually cross his desk. So we're going to have a company. Yeah, we are going to have a company. We're going to have a company full of independent lawyers running all around doing some sort of investigation into this and that touches the president's conflicts of interest or his cabinet members' conflicts of interest or, any of these things. And the attorney general is just going to have to recuse himself over and over again. So, we'll just have many, many Ken Starrs running around is what we'll have. Oh my God, that was painful. Okay, so then in the meantime, the intelligence. Oh God, this is such madness. This is such madness. Trying to let people believe that these nominees for these very important cabinet positions, these very important, the 25th Amendment of the Constitution is so ignored. But the 25th Amendment of the Constitution allows for the cabinet to say that this president is ineligible to serve, or that this president is unable to serve, or unwilling to serve, or not fit to serve. The cabinet under the 25th Amendment can make that decision. So who's in the cabinet really matters. And to pretend that we're actually hearing, this confirmation, hearing of this person or that person is so bogus. Because it's so packed. And by packed, I mean rammed down our throats that they had hearings, which you can't spend 5 minutes listening to without missing something from the other hearing. So, okay, I've brought you some clips from the Intelligence Committee's hearings on the Russian hacking. That included James Clapper today and included FBI Director James Comey. The Comey part is priceless. Priceless. You can put no price on the belly laugh that you're going to get when I play it. First, let's go to a brief clip. This is a clipette because it's not really, that long. It's going to go woo right by you. So listen to this. This is James Clapper. For those of you who go, play the part where he says they hacked into our, and affected our election. Play that. All right. This is today.
Putin and the Russian government also developed a clear preference for President-elect Trump. Russia aspired to help President-elect Trump's election chances when possible by discrediting Secretary Clinton and publicly contrasting her unfavorably to him.
Okay, that's the part. That was today. That wasn't from the other day. The other day we were playing the videos, but today can't play the videos because there was too much. And sound editing is easier for me. I should work for Scorsese as the sound editor because the movie is called Silence. I probably could do it. No, but okay, so here, that was Clapper, in his opening statement. Yes, clearly the Russians hacked, and clearly they had a preferred candidate, and clearly they did everything they could to make sure Donald Trump got elected. Clearly. Okay, so you have that part. So now, from Oregon, Ron Wyden, the senator, he questions James Comey, the moment. And he asks Comey about whether or not the GOP has been hacked and other things. Now, this is priceless, okay? This is just because they did hack the GOP, and Comey's known it all along, okay?
There were successful penetrations of some groups and campaigns, particularly at the state level on the Republican side of the aisle.
Nice.
And some limited penetration of old Republican National Committee domains.
Lovely.
My question for you, Director Comey, is has the FBI investigated these reported relationships? And if so, what are the agency's findings?
Thank you, Senator. I would never comment on investigations, whether we have one or not, in an open forum like this. So I really can't answer it one way or another.
Will you provide an unclassified response to these questions and release it to the American people prior to January 20th?
I'm sorry, you said will I?
Yes. Will you provide an unclassified response to the question I've asked. And as I've said, it's been reported widely. It's on the Reuters news service, widely
everywhere.
reported. Will you provide an unclassified response to the question I asked and release it to the American people prior to January 20?
Sir, I'll answer any question you ask, but the answer will likely be the same as I just gave you. I can't talk about it.
I will tell you, I think the American people have a right to know this. And if there is delay in declassifying this information and relating it to the American people, releasing it to the American people, and it doesn't happen before January 20th, I'm not sure it's going to happen. And that's why I'm troubled, and I hope that you will make a declassified statement with respect to the questions I've asked.
Okay, so he was asking a question about collusion. He was asking the question, is there any evidence that the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians? Because what's been widely reported is the same words that were coming out of the Russians' mouths were the same words that were coming out of Donald Trump's mouth. Almost verbatim. Same words. Interesting that the Trumps and the Russians don't know that many words, so that their words would be the same. So he was asking them about collusion, and he said, well, I would never talk about an ongoing investigation in a public forum if there was an ongoing investigation. So Angus King from Maine, the independent senator, says, I'm sorry, but did you answer Ron Wyden's question?
Mr. Comey, did you answer Senator Wyden's question that there is an investigation underway as to connections between either the political campaigns and the Russians?
I didn't say one way or another.
You didn't say that there...
That was my intention, at least.
You didn't say one way or another whether even there's an investigation underway?
Correct. I don't, especially in a public forum, we never confirm or deny a pending investigation.
The irony
I'm not saying...
The irony of your making that statement here, I cannot avoid, but I'll move on.
Well, we sometimes think differently about closed investigations.
We have crossed over into some other world. Comey actually had the nerve to sit there and say he doesn't comment on ongoing investigations in public forums when he released the information that his FBI was now going to investigate further Hillary Clinton's email scandal 10 days before the election in the most public manner ever. And Angus King just said, the irony of that coming out of your mouth. Now, see, isn't that the word that I keep using? It's so ironic. Oh, Henry is rolling in his grave. 47 after.
All things Randy at RandyRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, The Randy Rhodes Show.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a diversified media enterprises production. I'm Doug Cunningham. Fiat Chrysler's announcement that it's investing $1 billion in Ohio and Michigan auto plants is being embraced by the United Auto Workers Union. UAW President Dennis Williams says it shows Fiat Chrysler's commitment to the United States, to UAW members and their employees. The UAW says the announcement confirms ongoing discussions the UAW has been having with Fiat Chrysler. The union says the investment will benefit UAW members and their families by providing greater job security and a world-class manufacturing environment. The AFL-CIO says Congress should abandon plans for the reckless repeal of the Affordable Care Act without providing an immediate replacement. Approximately 20 million people have insurance through the Affordable Care Act that they will lose if it's repealed.
Donald Trump's choice to head the Department of Education is the antithesis of public education and all it represents. And it's the antithesis of what our kids need.
American Federation of Teachers President Randi Weingarten speaking at the National Press Club Monday. The AFT and the National Education Association are opposing the nomination of billionaire Betsy DeVos as Federal Education Secretary. The teachers' unions say DeVos is an ideological extremist intent on defunding and undermining public education in America.
She hasn't taught in a public school. She hasn't served on a school board. She never attended a public school, nor did she send her kids to one. The most anti-public education nominee in the history of the department. Her drive to privatize education is demonstrably destructive to public schools and to the education success of all of our children.
Striking Momentive workers will be back at the bargaining table for sessions January 10th, 11th, and 12th. IUE CWA Local 81-359 has been on strike for more than 2 months. Issues include health care, retiree benefits, and 401ks. Local President Dominic Patrignani told local TV channel 13 that strike solidarity is strong with support from other unions and the community.
We're in this for the long haul, folks. We're in this to take on corporate greed and to try to do whatever we could to get a fair contract for our members.
Workers Independent News is brought to you by the American Federation of Teachers and its 1.6 million members working to reclaim the promise of public education, health care, and public services for our students, their families, and our communities. More information online at aft.org. Brought to you by Union Active, your certified iOS and Android mobile app developer, offering high-quality, union-made mobile apps backed by a support team which upgrades your product to every new mobile operating system. Features, pricing, and examples are online at unionactive.com.
You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
The Randi Rhodes Show is brought to you by our partners at ITM Trading. Call them at 1-888-OWN-GOLD and ask for a free gold kit. 1-888-OWN-GOLD.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
One more thing that Jeff Sessions doesn't know is whether or not millions of fraudulent votes were cast. He doesn't know. All right. So Al Franken is questioning him right now. And he just asked him, of the nearly 138 million votes that were cast and no states reported any indications of any fraudulent voting. Maybe we had 2 people arrested for voting twice, both in Texas for Trump. He said, what evidence do you have for millions of people, because, Trump is saying and he's tweeting that he would have won the popular vote if millions of people hadn't fraudulently voted. So Senator Jeff Sessions was just asked whether or not he agreed that millions of people, he said he doesn't know. These are all the things he doesn't know. He doesn't know anything about ongoing investigations into international banks that hold the loans of the POTUS. He doesn't know anything about the Russian hacking because he decided not to get himself briefed, okay, by the FBI, who is testifying down the hall that they completed their investigation, signed on to the investigation that was declassified and produced for us last week regarding the Russian hacking. That was the National Security Agency. It was the Director of National Intelligence. It was, the FBI also signed on to the report saying that with very high confidence there was Russian hacking with a clear preference for one candidate over another, and that candidate that they preferred was Donald Trump. And they did everything that they could, covert stuff, paid trolls, everything that they could, setting up fake news sites, doing everything that they could to influence the voters in the United States to despise Hillary Clinton, to fill them up. And Comey himself reacted to it in that way, where he, 10 days before the election, said, right after Rudy Giuliani was on Fox News saying a big surprise is coming, big, it's going to be huge. And then the next day, Comey gets on the TV and says, we're looking into the Hillary Clinton emails again, because we got Anthony Weiner's computer in New York, the New York Bureau. Rudy, he's got them crazy down there, and they want this thing reopened because they say there might be or might not be new information related to the email case. So I'm going public with that information, and the FBI, I want you to know, is going to continue to look at the email investigation through the Anthony Weiner computer, because maybe Huma Abedin, used his computer and they were sending classified information to each other on Weiner's computer, which turned out to be not true. So now they ask Comey whether or not, why you've done the investigation. You've signed on to the investigation that was declassified for the American people Monday. or Friday. We weren't supposed to get it till Monday, but they released it on Friday. Friday, we got the report from the DNI and the other all 17 intelligence agencies with high confidence, except for one, said that they knew what had gone on and that the Russians inserted themselves into this election in the most vile way. They violated our press and pretended to be our press. They violated our information superhighway by pretending to be regular, ordinary people. And they were paid trolls that were populating these chat rooms and that were populating Facebook pages and were populating Twitter feeds. They also had bots that were massively disseminating information as if it was real, over and over. 800,000 shares or 800, all done by bots inside the Russian government in St. Petersburg at this paid organization that was part of the Russian intelligence operation, blah, blah, on and on. But Comey won't release his declassified version. And when Ron Wyden asks him, why won't you, release a declassified version so we can talk about it, because it's been widely reported, because we know you signed on to the report, the classified and the declassified version. Where's yours? He says, I won't talk about it in public. And Angus King is like, the irony of hearing that swill coming from you. So one can only hope that what Comey is really investigating, that doesn't include what's already been signed on to by the intelligence communities, including the FBI, is an internal affairs investigation into the New York Bureau of the FBI and whether or not Rudy Giuliani tainted them in some way or got them to tell Washington, D.C. that this Wiener computer was so valuable to the D.C. investigation into Hillary Clinton's email that he really needs to say something, or the FBI is going to revolt on him and have some sort of a mutiny in the middle of an election, which he felt would be worse. And so now he's looking into that particular aspect, an internal affairs investigation that includes Rudy Giuliani, who, by the way, is a known racist who said Black lives don't matter, blue lives matter, all lives matter, Black lives matter is racist in and of itself. And then, of course, Jeff Sessions associated himself with them and now is sitting in front of his committee today trying to get confirmed as Attorney General by saying, just because I'm a Southern conservative doesn't mean I'm a racist. What a circus it is up there. This is like so in the 1986 hearings, Jeff Sessions said that his comments of the past had been misunderstood and taken out of context, and today he says he never even said them. So he's evolved to somebody who is so ill-informed about whether or not there were millions of fraudulent voters, something that would come under the auspices of the FBI, the Attorney General, things like this. He doesn't know about Russian hacking. He doesn't know about Deutsche Bank. He doesn't know about the settlement there. He doesn't know that Donald Trump's got all these loans, or if that means anything. Well, what about the emoluments clause? Well, it applies, but only to a certain extent to the president. I'm not really sure. I have to look into that. Well, what about the independent counsel? I mean, it sounds to me like you're going to have to recuse yourself from just about every issue that comes across your desk. Do you think independent counsels are worth spending the money on if they don't produce an indictment? I mean, don't the American people expect an indictment when they spend money, millions and millions and millions of extra dollars on somebody outside of your office because you can't do it for the low bargain basement price that we pay you to be Attorney General? Now you got to go and hire people like Ken Starr and other independent counsels. I mean, why the American people foot the bill for that over and over again? Won't they expect an indictment to come? And how does that affect, the impartiality of your office if that's all you're going to do? You have to look into that too. I don't know. I'm not clear. I don't understand the full meaning of the independent counsel statute. I don't believe anybody has total agreement on the independent. I just know that we don't have them anymore, and perhaps we will have them going in the future. But, that we'll leave that up to you, my colleagues, to create another independent counsel statute so that I can do that. Otherwise, I'm going to have to recuse myself, and these things will go uninvestigated because I won't be able to do it. Doesn't that then mean that he is ineligible to be the next Attorney General? Not if you're a conservative. See, that's the thing. All these Republicans will vote for him. All of them. Every single last one. And this is where the basics of small d democracy, democratic governance, goes right out the window. When you hear a guy say he will have to recuse himself from every major issue, it's over.
To speak to Randi, call now, you bastards. 561-270-3844.
Hello.
Randi Rhodes. Air Force.
Okay, you know what my favorite snack is, right? Yeah, it's jerky, but it's Herky Jerky. It's not the kind of jerky you can find at the gas station. You can't find it at the supermarket. No. This comes in elk, buffalo, beef, and bacon. Yes, bacon. Hot, mild, 14 other incredible flavors. And the people at Herky Jerky said that it's been a huge hit for Randi listeners, the bacon. So they're going to offer $7 off each pack of bacon jerky for the rest of January, 20% off the regular price. That offer is for you guys only, Randi Rhodes listeners only. Just type in Randi in the promo code section during your checkout and you'll get the discount. There's beef, there's elk, there's venison, and of course there's bacon sticks too. These are the most amazing things you've ever had. The sticks have the right bite to them. The flavor is amazing. They're delicious and they're fresh every single time. The bacon is a slab that you can use on BLTs, put on salads, or just munch right out of the big bag. But now, because you loved it so much, for Randi Rhodes listeners, $7 off each bag at checkout. Type in promo code Randi at Herky Jerky.
It's Tuesday, January 10, 2017.
He has viewed the entire world through the lens of what's good for Exxon.
Unresolved questions and conflicts of interest for Trump's nominee for Secretary of State.
Some thresholds, if we cross them, can't be reversed.
Outgoing Secretary of State John Kerry warns MIT students that time is running out to act on climate change. China to invest nearly $500 billion in renewable energy by 2020. Plus, President Obama says global transition away from fossil fuels is now irreversible.
Well, there's a little bit of good news then. All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
2016, it was the hottest year ever. Donald Trump won the presidency, and on top of that, the Chicago Cubs won the World Series. I'm pretty sure that's 3 out of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse right there.
I'm pretty sure you're right. This is your Green News Report.
If Dirty Grandpa wins Best Picture at the Oscars, we done for.
Okay, Desi Doyen, I'm not sure what Donald Trump and the Republicans are thinking. I guess if they hold all of these confirmation hearings as quickly as possible, maybe no one will notice that ExxonMobil's CEO is becoming the Secretary of State?
It certainly does look like it. Donald Trump's nominee for Secretary of State, that's CEO of oil giant ExxonMobil, Rex Tillerson, is scheduled to undergo Senate confirmation hearings starting on Wednesday. While Tillerson has negotiated a nearly $200 million severance package to exit Exxon, major unresolved questions include whether Tillerson's 41 years as an Exxon employee will trigger conflicts of interest with foreign policy, such as the U.S. commitment to the historic International United Nations Paris Agreement to fight climate change, which could curtail Exxon's future profits. In an interview on the broadcast, David Arkush of PublicCitizen.org notes that Exxon is invested in nearly 200 countries and has a $500 billion oil and gas deal with Russia that has been suspended.
He has a lot of foreign policy experience. It's all through the lens of what's good for ExxonMobil, what will profit ExxonMobil. And I don't know if he can tell the difference between what's good for the country and what's good for ExxonMobil. I don't think we should take the chance. I don't think we should trust him.
Also, Democratic senators will have very little time to question Tillerson about Exxon's decades of funding climate science denial propaganda groups and Exxon's own role in suppressing its own scientific research confirming man-made climate change.
So the idea is have these hearings as quickly as possible, have them all at the same time with a whole bunch of other people so that the media is not even actually able to report on what is being found out, and so that many senators themselves can't even attend these hearings because A lot of these senators are in multiple committees and they have to be at a different hearing.
Meanwhile, outgoing U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry focused on the fossil fuel industry's obstruction of action on climate change in what the U.S. State Department called his final remarks on climate at a speech at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology on Monday. Kerry called on MIT students and research universities in general to do everything in their power to accelerate the shift away from fossil fuels. He warned that the country risks disastrous environmental and economic consequences from extreme weather to rising seas.
What we do right now today matters, because if we don't go far enough, fast enough, the damage we could inflict could take centuries to undo, if it can be undone at all. Powerful forces invested in the status quo are working against change. But the fact is that change has already started. We need to find ways to speed it up dramatically because we are in a race against time.
Without mentioning Trump or Tillerson by name, Kerry warned that other countries are already eager to invest in and profit from the boom in clean energy. President Obama sounded a similar theme when on Monday he became the first sitting U.S. president to publish a paper in the prestigious scientific research journal Science. He warned the incoming Trump administration that withdrawing the U.S. from the United Nations Paris Agreement to cut global emissions would not only undermine other nations' trust in America's promises, but also that the U.S. could lose its seat at the table in holding other nations accountable for their emissions pledges. Obama also wrote that regardless of Trump's policies, the global transition toward renewable energy is irreversible, noting that the U.S. economy grew by 10% during his tenure, even as it cut emissions. Finally, China is definitely not waiting for U.S. leadership. The Chinese government has announced it will invest more than $350 billion to expand and deploy renewable energy electricity, more than $250 billion over the next 4 years, creating 13 million jobs in renewable energy by 2020.
And we're still having pretend debates on whether climate change is a hoax. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find us and follow us on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
On my way to better things, I found myself some ways. Distant roads are calling me.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randy Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
You can't handle the truth.
Putin and the Russian government also developed a clear preference for President-elect Trump. Russia aspired to help President-elect Trump's election chances when possible by discrediting Secretary Clinton and publicly contrasting her unfavorably to him.
Election.
I have done no research into that. I know just what the media says about it.
Do you think you could get briefed anytime soon?
Well, I'll need to.
You have to laugh because, it's like when the United States was in the Great Depression, I heard that people sang and danced and, they tried to sing songs like We're in the Money and, they invented the musical and, just the idea that musicals are back tells me we're in for a really crappy time. Just the idea that La La Land is sweeping the award shows, that a modern musical is sweet. The feel-good movies of the day are the ones that are winning everything. Tells me we're in for a really crappy time. You know what I'm saying? So this is so bizarre. These two hearings so far today, and there's a third one going on that I haven't even been able to look at, and that's General John Kelly for Homeland Security. Because of course you want a military guy in charge of the Homeland Security. Oh, Homeland is back on Sunday, by the way. I think it has everything to do about, the situation we find ourselves in currently. I do. I'm not sure. I have to start watching it on Sunday, and then we could discuss whether or not Carrie can save us from this. But I was looking at ways to not get to January 20th, ways that wouldn't hurt me. Yeah, the inauguration day. And one of the ways seems to be the 25th Amendment. It does. It seems to be that we would get to January 20th, but then we could remove him. It's one of the ways we could remove him really quickly, is if this cabinet turns on him and finally has the temerity or the cojones, chutzpah, to say, oh my God, he's worse than we thought. He's unfit to serve. He's a danger. We don't want him near the nukes. We don't want him near the emoluments clause. I mean, the man is making money hand over fist. Russia is a co-owner of this country now. The oligarchs have, weaseled their way into the American life, and they're trying to buy all the tranches of money that the United States has and privatize them, like the Medicare Trust Fund, like the Social Security Trust Fund, things like that, where there are large tranches of money. This is how the Russians do their thing, how they did their thing over there. This is what Putin did, is he privatized, sold the industries that the state ran, that the state owned, and primarily it was oil and gas. And like a handful of very well-connected, very wealthy people were able to buy Russia, literally. And they had a giant 1930s style depression over there. Do you know? And this seems to be what Russia has in mind for us. And, the more I read about Donald Trump's ties to Russia, the more of a chill goes up your spine. This is a Time magazine. Now, Time magazine made Donald Trump Man of the Year. Trolls. So I'm quoting from a magazine that puts your guy on the front freaking page. Big portrait of him, Man of the Year. And Jeff Nesbitt, who was the communications director for former Vice President Dan Quayle when he was in the White House, wrote an article for Time magazine about how Russia and Donald Trump are intertwined almost as one. That it's more than a bromance. They've reproduced. And I'm just going to read this because how else is it going to get from my brain into yours? Russian intelligence agencies have allegedly recently digitally broken into 4 different American organizations that are affiliated either with Hillary Clinton or the Democratic Party since late May. But as of today, I just want to update. As of actually Friday, we know that they also broke into GOP, they broke into State Party, and they also broke into the election boards. What they did with that information, we don't know because they won't declassify it. But they did. So that's the update. All the hacks appear designed to benefit Donald Trump's presidential aspirations in one fashion or another. And when asked about this and his affection for Russian President Vladimir Putin, Trump said any interference that a connection exists between the two is absurd and the stuff of conspiracy. I have 0 investments in Russia, he tweeted after the Democratic National Committee was apparently hacked by Russia, and the emails were released by WikiLeaks on the eve of the DNC convention to nominate Clinton as its 2016 presidential candidate. Donald Trump encouraged Russia to commit hacking.
But it would be interesting to see. I will tell you this. Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing. I think you will probably be rewarded mightily by our press.
So Donald Trump encouraged Russia to commit a cybercrime against Hillary Clinton, saying he hoped the foreign nation could recover some of her deleted emails. Most of the coverage of the links between Trump and Putin's Russia takes the GOP presidential nominee at his word that he has lusted after a Trump Tower in Moscow and came up spectacularly short. But Trump's dodge that he has no businesses in Russia, so there's no connection to Putin, is a classic magician's trick. Show one idle hand while the other is actually doing the work. The truth, as several reporters have painstakingly shown since the first hack of a Clinton-affiliated group took place in late May or early June, is that several of the Trump businesses outside of Russia are entangled with Russian financiers inside Putin's circle. So yes, it's true that Donald Trump failed to land a business venture inside Russia, but the real truth is that as major banks in America stopped lending him money following his many bankruptcies, the Trump Organization was forced to seek financing from non-traditional institutions. Several had direct ties to Russian financial interests in ways that have raised eyebrows. What's more, several of Trump's senior advisors have business ties to Russia or its satellite politicians. Quote, the Trump-Russia links beneath the surface are even more extensive, Max Boot wrote in the Los Angeles Times. Trump has sought and received funding from Russian investors for his business ventures, especially after most American banks stopped lending to him following his multiple bankruptcies. What's more, 3 of Trump's top advisors all have extensive financial and business ties to Russian financiers, wrote Boot, the former editor of the op-ed page of the Wall Street Journal, which is the most right-wing opinion page there is in mainstream media. He's now a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations, Max Boot is. He wrote, Trump's de facto campaign manager, Paul Manafort, was a longtime consultant to Viktor Yanukovych, the Russian-backed president of Ukraine, who was overthrown in 2014. Manafort has also done multi-million-dollar business deals with Russian oligarchs. Trump's foreign policy advisor, Carter Page, has his own business ties to the state-controlled Russian oil giant Gazprom. Another Trump foreign policy advisor, retired Army Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, flew to Moscow last year to attend a gala banquet celebrating Russia Today, the Kremlin's propaganda channel, and was seated at the head table next to Putin. Manafort denounced the New York Times Monday for a deeply reported story that broke over the weekend showing that the secret ledgers in Ukraine contained references to $12.7 million in payments earmarked for him. The Times report said that the party of former Ukraine president and pro-Russia ally Viktor Yanukovych set aside the payments for Manafort as part of an illegal and previously undisclosed system of payments. He denies it. And in response, Hillary's campaign manager, Robbie Mook, issues a statement that says, quote, Donald Trump has a responsibility to disclose campaign chair Paul Manafort's and all other campaign employees and advisors' ties to Russia or pro-Kremlin entities, including whether any of Trump's employees or advisors are currently representing and or being paid by them. But it's Trump himself's financing from Russian satellite business interests that would seem to explain his pro-Putin sympathy. The most obvious example is Trump Soho. It's a building in downtown Manhattan. A complicated web of financial intrigue that's played out in court. A lawsuit claimed that the business group Bayrock, remember that name, it's going to be like your Carlyle group when the Bush administration was there. Remember Bayrock. A lawsuit claimed that business group Bayrock, underpinning Trump Soho, was supported by criminal Russian financial interests. While its initial claim absolved Trump of knowledge of those activities, Trump himself later took on the group's principal partner as a senior advisor to the Trump Organization. Quote, tax evasion and money laundering are the core of Bayrock's business model, the lawsuit said, of the financiers behind Trump Soho. The financing came from Russian-affiliated business interests that engaged in criminal activities, it said. But there is no evidence Trump took any part in or knew of their racketeering. Journalists who've looked at the Bayrock lawsuit and Trump Soho wonder why Trump was involved with them at all. Quote, what was Trump thinking entering into business with partners like these? It's a question he's tried to banish by downplaying his ties to Bayrock. But Bayrock wasn't just involved with Trump Soho. It financed multiple Trump projects around the world. Trump didn't just partner with Bayrock, the company embedded with him. Bayrock put together deals for mammoth Trump-named, Trump-managed projects. 2 in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, a resort in Phoenix, and the Trump Soho in New York. But as the New York Times has reported, that was only the beginning of the Trump organization's entanglement with Russian financiers. Trump was quite taken with Bayrock's founder, Tevfik Arif, a former Soviet-era commerce official originally from Kazakhstan. Quote, Bayrock, which was developing commercial properties in Brooklyn, proposed that Mr. Trump license his name to hotel projects in Florida, Arizona, and New York, including Trump Soho, the Times reported. The other development partner for Trump Soho was the Sapir organization, whose founder, Tamir Sapir, was from the former Soviet Republic of Georgia. Trump was eager to work with both financial groups on Trump projects all over the world. Quote, Mr. Trump was particularly taken with Mr. Arif's overseas connections. In a deposition, Mr. Trump said that the two had discussed numerous deals all over the world and that Mr. Arif had brought potential Russian investors to Mr. Trump's office to meet him. He testified, quote, Bayrock knew the people, knew the investors, and in some cases, I believe they were friends of Mr. Arif, Mr. Trump said. And this was going to be Trump International Hotel and Tower in Moscow, Kiev, Istanbul, etc., Poland, and Warsaw. That's what he that's what he testified to. That's exactly the quote from the document. And by the way, when he was asked about whether or not he understood that Turkey was making money off of oil that was controlled by ISIS, Trump told a radio talk show host that he couldn't really comment on whether or not Turkey was making money off of ISIS-controlled oil fields because he was conflicted because he owned Trump Towers in Istanbul. The Times also reported that federal court records recently released show yet another link to Russian financial interests in Trump's businesses. A Bayrock official brokered a $50 million investment in Trump Soho and 3 other Bayrock projects by an Icelandic firm preferred by wealthy Russians in favor with President Vladimir Putin, the Times reported. The Icelandic company FL Group was identified in a Bayrock investor presentation as a strategic partner, along with Alexander Mashkevich, a billionaire once charged in a corruption case involving fees paid by a Belgian company seeking business in Kazakhstan. That case was settled. Trump Soho was so complicated that Bayrock's finance chief, Jody Criss, sued it for fraud. In the lawsuit, Chris alleged that a primary source of funding for Trump's big projects with Bayrock arrived, quote, magically from sources in Russia and Kazakhstan whenever the business interest needed funding. There are other Russian business ties to the Trump organization as well. Trump's first real estate venture in Toronto, Canada, was a partnership with 2 Russian-Canadian entrepreneurs, reported by Toronto Life in 2013. The hotel's developer, Talon International, is run by Val Levitan and Alex Schneider, 2 Russian-Canadian entrepreneurs. Levitan made his fortune manufacturing slot machines and creating banknote validation technology. Finally, for all his denials of his Russian ties lately, Trump has boasted in the past his many meetings with Russian oligarchs. During one trip to Moscow, Trump bragged that they all showed up to meet him to discuss projects around the globe. Quote, almost all the oligarchs were in the room just to meet with me. And when Trump built a tower in Panama, his clients were wealthy Russians. The Washington Post reported, quote, that his son Donald Jr. said, Russians make up a pretty disproportionate cross-section of a lot of our assets. We see a lot of money pouring in from Russia. That's Donald Jr. said. He said that at a real estate conference in 2008. And remember, yesterday I read you a different article that had the executive vice president of Trump Organization saying the same damn thing, that the Russian money was just pouring in. The only insistence that Trump acknowledges any sort of Russian financial connection is a Florida mansion he sold to a wealthy Russian. This is what he says his only connection to Russia is. He said, what do I have to do with Russia? You know, the closest I came to Russia, I bought a house in Palm Beach for $40 million. I sold it to a Russian for $100 million, including brokerage commissions. But it should be obvious to anyone trying to pay attention to these moving targets that Trump is saying one thing and doing something else. When it comes to Trump and Russia, the truth may take a while to emerge. So it's great that we're going to have, like the new attorney general who's like so on it, right? I mean, he's so briefed up. He knows everything about the international banking scandals. He knows everything about the Deutsche Bank loans. He knows everything. Oh, wait, he doesn't? Oh. Yeah. And then there's another one about Rex Tillerson. Apparently, Rex Tillerson did business, ExxonMobil did, with Rex Tillerson as CEO. Yeah, with the Iranians during the sanctions. That's not really a problem, is it?
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Now that Trump's on his way to the White House, how long do you think it's going to take him and his Wall Street cronies to completely wreck our economy? This Trump administration is greedy, full of avarice, and awful. And the damage they're going to do to the economy will become legend.
Mr. Trump.
They are going to make the financial crisis of 2008 look like a pool party. And once again, working class Americans, you're going to get soaked. And that's why now more than ever, it's time to diversify your investment portfolio. Gold's low correlation with stocks and bonds can help you in times of uncertainty. Just call my friends at ITM Trading today, get a free gold kit, and learn why gold survives every government, every currency, and every economic crisis. Call ITM Trading at 1-888-OWN-GOLD for guidance from their precious metals experts. They've helped tens of thousands of people navigate this market, and they have the best reputation in this industry. So call 1-888-OWN-GOLD, 1-888-OWN-GOLD.
This is Tara Devlin, a.k.a. Pterodactyl from RepublicanDirtyTricks.com on the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn. And this is my 2-minute tirade.
You gotta have hobbies, and one of mine is studying conservatives the same way Jane Goodall studied primates. And in my observations, I've noted, like others have, that conservatives seem to believe that the human race is made up of inherently bad people. Not them, of course, and the people who look like them, but those others, mainly brown people, who are lounging out in our social safety net hammock. Of course, this isn't true. America doesn't even have a generous safety net in comparison to the rest of the world. The only people really taking advantage of us are the welfare queens at the top. Can you imagine the laugh the Koch brothers must have had seeing these morons they bust into Washington rallying that they were taxed enough already? When we all know what they're really having a tantrum about was that there was a black guy in the White House who they swear was bribing everyone with Obama phones or something. Never mind that most people on welfare aren't black. The conservative meme that liberals are the true racists because they lure African Americans by offering them dependency is just a modern update to that old racist trope that African Americans are like easily led children who must be taught higher moral values. So when they cut people's lifelines, they're not just working out their racist manias, but they're teaching people pride and forcing them to learn the dignity of work. An insulting notion that assumes that pride and dignity are characteristics that some people don't inherently possess. But conservatives insist they're patriots. Look at their tri-corner hats straight for tea bags. But that's just another one of their misguided lies. Because the word patriot comes from the Latin meaning fellow countryman. So you really can't say you're a patriot if you love your country, but turn your back on the people in it. This is Tara Devlin from RepublicanDirtyTricks.com. Go there and find links to my Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram communities, and keep listening for 2-minute tirades and more on the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn. We stick together, we win.
We did it, you bastards! We're live, and it only took 2 years! Okay. All right. So we're back, we're live, and you're there, and we're here, and ain't that great? Now let me just tell you that if you want to listen whenever and wherever you'd like to listen, just go to RandyRhodes.com, click on podcasts and swag, and get your podcast commercial-free, on demand, on any device. RandyRhodes.com. Open all day, every day.
The Randi Rhodes Air Force. The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandyRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
Mr. Comey, did you answer Senator Wyden's question that there is an investigation underway as to connections between either the political campaigns and the Russians?
I didn't say one way or another.
You didn't say that there...
That was my intention, at least.
You didn't say one way or another whether even there's an investigation underway?
Correct. I don't, especially in a public forum, we never confirm or deny a pending investigation.
The irony
I'm not saying...
The irony of your making that statement here, I cannot avoid, but I'll move on.
Well, we sometimes think differently about closed investigations.
Oh, ouch. Damn. So what we have here is I still think Comey's doing an investigation. I still think that Comey is looking into whether or not Rudy Giuliani compromised or intimidated or otherwise threatened or otherwise, forced or played with the New York Bureau of the FBI in such a way that they ran to Comey, the head of the FBI, and said, you need to reopen or you need to look into the Clinton investigation, the emails again. And obviously Rudy knew something because he sat on Fox News and said, big surprise is coming, big, huge. And then the next day, Comey makes this announcement 10 days before the election that completely devastated Hillary Clinton's chances, even though, look, 2% of the American people was all it took, right? That was it. 2% of the American people. And it's strange, but, she did get 3 million more votes. It's just, a lot of people who were on the fence decided to go with Donald Trump thinking that Hillary Clinton was so completely dishonest. And it turns out that all of that stuff was, pretty much manufactured. All you had to do was say WikiLeaks, which is what Donald Trump said on the campaign trail I love WikiLeaks. I love WikiLeaks. And he knew that the Russians were using WikiLeaks as their funnel to denigrate Hillary Clinton, truthfully or not. I mean, the Podesta emails. What was in the Podesta emails? Absolutely nothing except that he loved making risotto. I mean, nothing. And then they started altering what those documents were saying. They started saying that there was some sort of a pedophilia ring that was being run out of a Washington pizza place where Podesta and Hillary Clinton were holding children as sex slaves. And they pushed that out. The Russians did that and pushed it out with their bots and their fake news outlets to the point where a man believed it so much so that he got in his car, drove to Washington with a loaded semi-automatic weapon and shot it in this pizza place, thinking that there was an underground tunnel that Hillary Clinton was either moving children in to the pizza place or out of the pizza place through. Unbelievable. All right, Freddie in Elizabeth, New Jersey.
Hey, how you doing, Randy?
Hey, Freddie.
So here's the thing. I'm a Bernie supporter, right? All right. So when it comes to these emails, so let's just put it out there, all right? Yes or no question, real quick. Did the DNC interfere with the primary elections for Hillary Clinton?
No.
Yes or no?
No, they
didn't.
They talked about it, but they didn't do it.
They didn't do anything.
No, they talked about questioning his Judaism. They talked about doing that, asking him what kind of a observant Jew he really is. But they never did it. It never. The only place you ever heard of it.
You're telling me they didn't tilt the scale for Hillary Clinton in the primary elections for Bernie Sanders? Is that what you're telling me?
Tell me what you're talking about.
There's not a stick. Because why in the world?
Well, tell me what you're talking about.
No, hold on.
All right.
Why in the world did Debbie Wasserman Schultz lose her seat, okay, after these WikiLeaks?
Because she was saying really nasty things about what they could do to Bernie Sanders, except they never did them.
That is not why.
Why? Why? Then why?
There's not enough for me.
So then you tell me.
What I'm gonna do, Randy, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get all my stuff, right? Yeah. I'm gonna go on Facebook and I'm gonna post it on your thing, on your website. How about that?
I'm
at work right now.
Why my Facebook page? Why not tell me now?
Why? Because I don't have the information right now.
Then why are you calling me with these allegations?
Hold on. Because it's true. It's all over the place.
Listen,
Glenn Greenwald exposed it. and also the Young Turk. The Young Turks, you got Jimmy Dore, also Secular Talk with Kyle. It's all over the place.
What's all over the place?
The DNC, what are you talking about? The DNC did not interfere with these elections. Even Howard, even admitted to it. He agreed with me.
Who agreed with you?
The person that answered the phone when I called.
I don't care. He's not the host of the show. I don't know. I don't know what. No, I don't see what you're saying. I'm gonna just do this. All right. I'm gonna get I'm gonna get all my facts, yes,
right?
Please.
And I'm gonna post it on your Facebook.
Fine.
Right?
You know, if that's a chicken shit way of doing it, but if that's how you feel, you need to. Because you're calling me with an allegation that the DNC did. And the things that they were talking to each other about, which was disgusting. Okay, what Debbie Wasserman Schultz was talking about doing was wrong. And that's why when it got to be public knowledge that they were even discussing asking him about his religion, she was told, step down. Because what you're talking about doing is... The DNC is supposed to be impartial in a primary.
All right, no problem.
Obviously, those emails showed that Debbie Wasserman Schultz was not unbiased. But did they do the things they talked about doing? No.
Randy, how long you got left on the radio?
Another half hour.
Another half hour. All right, I'm going to get my facts and I'm going to call back.
Yeah,
how about that?
All right, that's fine. Robert in Naples.
Oh my God! I don't think he's got no facts, that dude. Anyway,
no, I don't. I think that's a lot of horrible stuff that Debbie Wasserman Schultz was writing. I think that I think the DNC was supposed to be neutral. I don't think they were. In fact, we know that they weren't. We know that Debbie was all in for Clinton at the DNC as its chair. That's absolutely wrong. That's why she was asked to step down. But did they do what they said they were going to do to Bernie? Did they ask those questions or
right? But Randy, listen, as a street smart New Yorker like you are, all you got to do is when someone says they got your emails, you say, you know what? It's compromised. I didn't write that. Someone planted that in there. That's not my writing. I don't know what you're. This is someone trying to divide our party. That's all you got to say, even if you wrote it or not. I don't know why. How could you be that stupid and say, you know what, those were my emails? But I didn't call for that. I'm calling about this Meryl Streep and Trump thing and the distraction, what it is. Obviously, there's a lot of other things that are more important going on.
Yeah.
But what the real thing is here that none of the media ever wants to touch about is that why did Trump even bring up that gentleman's name? And the reason is he brought up because he challenged him on the 9/11, thousands of Muslims celebrating across the river. And he said, no, that's bullshit, right? And so what Trump...
What guy's name? Wait, what guy's name?
The gentleman who has the baldy in the arm or the hand, he's got the defect.
The report is Serge, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I don't know who he is.
His name's Serge.
Right, and then every seventh grader, whoever went to grade in middle school, has made that move, mocking somebody, with some kind of deformity, And so you can't tell me that... number one, Kellyanne, that this is just something that Trump does, because he's just a passionate person and not an articulate speaker or whatever. The reality is that we all saw what he did. It's wrong. And then the bigger subject is that why is he knocking the guy? He's trying to make that guy into nothing because he actually knows that there was no 1,000 people celebrating there on 9/11. Manzo.
No, because listen, what we have as a POTUS is a braggart, a liar, a bully, a demagogue. We have somebody who is a deadbeat, an ignoramus. We have somebody who is a chiseler and a sincere racist or an insincere one. That's what we have, and he is waiting in the wings to take over the most powerful country in the free world. And it's mind blowing. And now there's all this evidence that this was what Russia wanted, and that the reason why Donald Trump keeps playing up what a friendly place Russia is and how we should all get along with them, even though he's a murderer. He murders journalists. He jailed a band named Pussy Riot. Okay,
yes.
because they spoke out against him. He poisoned a guy, an oligarch who wouldn't play with him. He polonium. He bombed the crap out of civilians in Syria. I mean, the man invaded his neighbors. He invaded Ukraine. And Donald Trump stands there and says, well, Crimea, they wanted to be part of Russia. Really? Right. Then why didn't they vote that way?
Well, he didn't even know that they were in there. Remember that? He was surprised when...
So this is what I'm saying. We have a Manchurian candidate, finally. We actually have a Manchurian president. We have a Russian tool. We have a Russian agent who is about to take over all the intelligence agencies, the entire Justice Department, the entire U.S. military, Homeland Security, and is going to be in charge of appointing a Supreme Court justice to interpret the Constitution and whether or not we're allowed to assemble, whether or not we have freedom of choice, whether or not we have freedom of speech, whether or not we have freedom of the press. That is frightening.
Randy, World War III already started and ended, and we lost. Basically, we lost. I mean, it's terrible. It's beyond terrible.
Well, I mean, wait, you haven't seen anything yet.
No, you know what? We got to fight, and we have to do it subversively. We got to get them back, and we got to hit them. We got to hit them hard, and then we got to make them. We got to put fear in them, And when I'm talking about them, I'm talking about anyone in Russia. Every student, we should send them back home for their own protection. Because if it's true what you say,
oh God, no, that's ridiculous.
They should, for their own safety, they should leave.
Oh, please, that means I have to go too. Stop it.
No, you're not Russian.
I know, I'm Ukrainian, but no, honestly, this whole thing, this was Russian government. This is Russian intelligence. This is the GSU. This is the KGB. What the new KGB is the GSU. Okay, this is Putin. This is Putin's Russia. This isn't Russian immigrants like my friends in Brighton Beach. Please, this is Russian flight money. This is big money. This is huge oligarchs' money. You want to start reverse engineering this? Go look at who bought what from Trump in Trump Soho. Go look at who bought what from the Trump development in Fort Lauderdale. Go look at who bought what in Phoenix from Trump. You'll find it's all the Russian flight capital. It's all these people that, made a fortune when Russia privatized and sold off all of its stuff to a handful of people and threw the entire economy into a Great Depression. Those people had no faith in Putin either. They just bought and then they had to get their money out of Russia. And it all came here and it went to Donald Trump. And Donald Trump took it, no questions asked, even if they were mob affiliated, even if they were oligarchs from Russia, even if they had committed crimes in Russia in order to get Vladimir Putin to hand over the keys to this, this Russian oil company or that gas company or whatever it was. Trump took their money. And now Russia wants to get paid back. They put all this money into Trump, and now they want their money back. This is the ebb and flow of oligarchy. This is the ebb and flow of a kleptocracy. And Donald Trump is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Russian intelligence agencies, of Vladimir Putin. And it's so sad because Russia could be brought to its knees in another year or two if we put serious sanctions on Russia regarding the oil and gas business. But no, who does Donald Trump put as the Secretary of State? The head of ExxonMobil, Rex Tillerson, who was in charge of ExxonMobil Russia. And now there's an article about how ExxonMobil did business with Iran, with Syria, with Sudan, when we had sanctions, when Putin was bombing civilians. It's the sickest thing. The sales were conducted in 2003, 4, and 5 by a group called Infinium. ExxonMobil owned a 50% share of Infinium. This was investigative journalism done by American Bridge. ExxonMobil told USA Today the transactions were legal. They don't deny they did them. They said they were legal because it was a joint venture with Shell, and Shell Corporation is based in Europe, and so the transaction didn't involve any U.S. employees, except for Rex Tillerson, who's now going to be our Secretary of State. And you got a guy sitting there today who's going to be the Attorney General who swears he doesn't know anything about any of this. And they don't deny that they did it, but they say, well, this is amazing. They say our overall annual revenue is $371 billion. So, quote, these transactions are not material by any reasonable measure. They say these are all legal activities complying with the sanctions at the time. The media manager at ExxonMobil told USA Today, said, we didn't feel they were material because of the size of the transactions. They were only, a few $1 million. That's all it was. Just a few $1 million of business with Iran, just a few $1 million of business with Syria during the time that we had sanctions on Iran and Syria. And, oh, by the way, it was a joint thing with Shell, and Shell is not American. They're Dutch. And so, no American employees were involved. And we didn't really think it was a big deal because the amounts were so small. It was just, a couple million here, a couple million there. This is going to be our Secretary of State. Now, he's not compromised either. Oh. We have to get this together. All right, 44 after.
Randy Rhodes Show is live on RandyRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
Hi, Truth Seekers. It's Kathy Malloy. I hope you will join us weeknights at 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West, only on the Progressive Voices Network. If you haven't heard the Mike Malloy Show lately, this is what you've been missing.
The most politically corrupt period in the history of this country. Forget Abscam, forget the Watergate, forget Teapot Dome, forget all of that stuff. Those were warm-up pitches. Just about every leading Republican in the country, and certainly every normal human being during the campaign, that Trump does not have the intelligence or the temperament or the understanding to deal with any of this stuff, much less to be the United States Commander-in-Chief with the launch codes, right? An example, at a September rally in Pensacola, Trump promised an active war response if the Iranian Navy disrespected U.S. naval vessels. He said this, quote, when they circle our beautiful destroyers with their little boats, and they make gestures at our people that they shouldn't be allowed to make, they will be shot out of the water. Jesus H. bleeding Christ. Make gestures that they shouldn't be allowed to make. What would those gestures be? Donald, the middle finger? Waving their guns around? What would those gestures be that they shouldn't be allowed to make that will cause them to be, quote, shot out of the water? Less than an hour after that, he tweeted this, insulting China and linking North Korea's weapons program to what Trump perceives as unfair trade practices. Jesus Christ. He tweeted, quote, China has been taking out massive amounts of money and wealth from the U.S. in totally one-sided trade, but won't help with North Korea. Nice. I mean, all he's done is insult China. But he's also said that, we should work with China to shut down Kim Un-Crazy's nuclear program. If you remember a year ago, Trump was praising Kim Un-Crazy. Remember when he said during a campaign rally that, quote, you have to give him credit, the way he took over. And in order to consolidate his power, if you remember, Kim Un-Crazy had his uncle executed, his father's brother, put a bullet in the back of that guy's head. I don't want any kind of competition here. I'm taking over. Everybody understand that? And since then, according to U.S. intelligence, there has been just a whole parade of people who have been executed for nothing. National security analyst named John Schindler said Trump's second tweet in particular was a big mistake about China because China has been North Korea's only ally, but has so far sided with the United States against North Korea on the matter of nuclear weapons. Not for much longer. A person of normal intelligence would not, in the same tweet, bust up on North Korea and insult China. Keep pissing off Beijing, Don. As President of the United States, you'll have no channel to the Democratic People's Republic of Korea next time the Norks do something crazy. End quote. The Norks being the North Koreans. You know, Nork. Keep pissing off Beijing, Don. You know, one unstable leader dealing with another unstable leader can result in some real nasty stuff happening. Don't you think? Hey, Truth Seekers, listen live to the Mike Malloy Show weeknights at 6 p.m. in the West, 9 p.m. in the East, only on the Progressive Voices Network. Watch the live show video stream at MikeMalloy.com. Can't listen live? Download the podcast at MikeMalloy.com. Don't miss a minute of the fun and frivolity.
The Randy Rhodes Show is brought to you by our partners at ITM Trading. Call them at 1-888-OWN-GOLD and ask for a free gold kit. 1-888-OWN-GOLD.
All things Randy at RandyRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randy Rhodes Show.
This ought to be the blockbuster of the day, this particular newspaper. This is a CNN article that was written by, boy, it's like the world-class, stable of reporters. This was written by Carl Bernstein, Jake Tapper, Jim Sciutto, and Evan Perez over at CNN. And it's set, and this makes the questioning today at the Intel, hearing just even more blockbuster. It says, listen to this, classified documents presented last week to President Obama and President-elect Trump included allegations that Russian operatives claim to have compromising personal and financial information about Mr. Trump. And their sources are multiple U.S. officials with direct knowledge of the briefings. They say that these allegations that Russia has compromising, blackmail-ready personal and financial information about Donald Trump was presented to the president currently and the POTUS in a 2-page synopsis that was appended to the report on Russian interference in the 2016 election. The allegations came in part from memos compiled by a former British intelligence operative whose past work U.S. intelligence officials consider credible. Comey it says the FBI, so that's Comey, is investigating the credibility and accuracy of these allegations, which are based primarily on information from Russian sources, but has not confirmed many essential details in the memos about Mr. Trump. The classified briefings last week were presented by 4 of the senior-most U.S. intelligence chiefs. This was last week's, closed-door briefing. Remember, they briefed Obama because he's the president. He goes first. Sorry, Donald, you're not that important yet. And then they briefed Donald Trump after. And they briefed Donald Trump in person because they wanted Donald Trump to know how severe this information was. So the National Intelligence Agency's head, James Clapper, the FBI Director Comey, CIA Director Brennan, and NSA Director Admiral Mike Rogers all personally went to Trump Tower and briefed Donald Trump on what is so horrifying about this 2016 hacking report. And apparently it's that they have information about Donald Trump's personal life and information about Donald Trump's financial dealings that could make Donald Trump blackmailable. At the very least, yes, he's compromised. He's completely and utterly compromised by the Russians. I'm telling you, this, the more you read about him and the Russians and it's okay. So remember I said to you, there was a little clip where he was on a right-wing radio talk show and he was asked about ISIS and the oil money that was coming, going to Turkey and benefiting Turkey. And he said, I can't answer that. I'm conflicted because I got Trump Towers, not 1, but 2 towers in Istanbul. That's what he said. You know what the right-wing talk show host was? It was Steve Bannon. Here's the clip.
Mr. Trump, we had Dr. Carson on earlier talking.
Okay, just so you know, that's Steve Bannon's voice. This is his Sirius XM show.
Mr. Trump, we had Dr. Carson on earlier talking about his trip to Syria, but we started the show with our live reporters in Turkey, London, Paris, Rome, etc., talking about this fracas right now between Putin and Erdogan. The BBC, we've talked about this 10 days ago on Breitbart, and our listeners about Turkey making money off of ISIS oil, that one of the revenue streams, major revenue streams, is oil, as you've talked about. Turkey's been the middleman. Putin now, finally, 9 days after it's up on Breitbart, BBC lead story, Putin saying, hey, we got a problem here. Turkey's the middleman and making plenty of cash off ISIS and has skin in the game, keeping ISIS around. Erdogan immediately goes back and says, hey, you can prove it, I'll step down. If your plan in prosecuting this war as commander-in-chief of the United States, if you're elected president, in prosecuting the war,
what war?
What do you do with Turkey? Is Turkey a reliable partner? I know they're a NATO ally. Are they a reliable partner?
Well, I have a little conflict of interest because I have a major building in Istanbul, and it's a tremendously successful job. It's called Trump Towers, 2 towers instead of 1. Not the usual 1, it's 2. And I've gotten to know Turkey very well, and they're amazing people. They're incredible people. They have a strong leader.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. So that's a big oops for Steve Bannon because he hosts Donald Trump on his freaking talk show and starts repeating Russian propaganda that says that Turkey is not a reliable NATO ally, that they're making money off of ISIS's oil. See, and the Russians, of course, want to, they're bombing the crap out of Syria, saying that they're fighting ISIS. They're not fighting ISIS. They were fighting the people that were trying to overthrow Bashar al-Assad, who is another brutal dictator. And so here's Breitbart spreading that propaganda on behalf of Russia, and Donald Trump saying, not even being able to figure out the game that's being played against Turkey, but instead saying, I can't even comment because I'm conflicted. I'm so conflicted because I got 2 towers in Istanbul. What a mess. Paul in Woodinville.
Hi, Randy.
Hi.
I got to tell you, I want to talk about Russia, but the first thing is, I know why we lost the election. We have too many stupid Democrats. I don't understand. Look, I'm going to say this. I can't stand Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I don't like her at all.
I don't either. And I've known her for 20 years.
She didn't do anything.
Well, I'll tell you the one thing that they did do. I'll tell you 2 things that I think that they did. And the reason that she had to step down was a good one. Okay, first of all, she's supposed to have been neutral. She obviously was not. We know this. Okay. And number 2, she did make the rounds with the media pretty good. And when she would go there, she would say things like, don't give Bernie so much time. You know what I mean? He's not really going to make it. We have inside information. He's not really going to make it. He's an old socialist. You know what I mean? Talk up Hillary. That's what she did.
She's a slimeball, and I don't like her.
I don't either.
But look at it this way. The primaries are run by the states. And if you want to see where shenanigans went on, look to Arizona, where they had a Republican Secretary of State who didn't provide enough polling places in parts of the state where were heavily Hispanic and so on. Okay? Other than that, there are caucuses, like here. When you have a caucus, it's a room full of people all debating. I don't see how the DNC is going to get in the middle of that.
Right.
There's no mechanism for the DNC to have fooled around with it at all. Bernie Sanders didn't get as many pledge delegates to begin with, and the super delegates are kind of like a electoral college. They're an electoral body.
And that's another fact that, I was a Bernie supporter too, but and the thing that was outraging me was how the superdelegates had pledged themselves to Hillary prior to even one single debate. I mean, he had barely thrown his hat in the ring when they said, we're all in for Hillary, so pretty much he can't win. And that's what Debbie Wasserman Schultz went around telling the media outlets. He can't win because of the system we have, because of the superdelegates. He can't win. Right.
But he didn't win pledge delegates anyway. She Hillary Clinton got the...
I know, but then you have to get into the whole conversation about whether or not people voted for her because they felt that the numbers would not be able to, get him the nomination. And the numbers were unable to get him the nomination because the supers pledged so freaking early. Now, if you want to say that, that's corruption in the Democratic Party, there, I will go with you there. Because that system has got to change because the winner is picked by people who are party apparatchiks before one single debate is held, before one single vote is cast. And that's ridiculous that we do that to ourselves, but we do that to ourselves.
Oh, okay, but it's also possible that more people wanted Hillary Clinton than Bernie Sanders.
We'll never know because of the system we had. We'll just never know because of the upfront finger on the scale that the supers can put. And make the numbers not able to add up so that people say, well, I don't think he can win. Like my mother, who did not in the end end up voting for Hillary Clinton as president. It's crazy.
No.
She didn't vote at all.
Okay. Well, let's talk about Russia.
All right.
The one thing about Russia is people don't understand, they're not a communist country. Since the breakup of the Soviet Union, Russia is an alt-right country. They're super conservative, and the tenet of alt-right is oligarchy. The super rich shall rule. There's so few of them, so how do they accomplish that? Oh, the old strategy of divide and conquer.
Yeah.
What strategies are those? White nationalism, racism, religious bigotry, all the things we heard from Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So what Russia realizes is that they know they're going to take over the United States, or they're nearly not going to take over any country because it would lead to military conflicts that just don't get anywhere. So what are they trying to do? They're trying to influence the governments in these countries to become alt-right, which is what they are, and then they think once the super rich run all the countries, that's the kind of world they want.
Yeah,
because Donald Trump has been one of the alt-right worldwide for a long time.
No, that's right. And they have compromising information about him now, according to these intelligence people, that will make sure that he stays on that oligarchic, demagogic, divide and conquer path for the benefit of the very, very wealthy oligarchs, of the benefit of the very, very wealthy billionaires, the people who Bernie has been talking about since the beginning of his campaign.
Less than 2 weeks from Inauguration Day, and the Republican Party is gumming up the works, scheduling 10 confirmation hearings over the next 3 days.
Battle lines being drawn. Nobody's right if everybody's wrong.
Plus, on Tuesday night, President Obama delivers his farewell speech, and Donald Trump allegedly holds his first press conference in 166 days on Wednesday, competing with 4 of his confirmation hearings. But the Democrats are already gearing up for their first big battle of the 115th Congress, health care.
Don't let us get sick. Don't let us get old.
There were impassioned floor speeches on Monday afternoon. Ed Markey of Massachusetts.
It would be tragic if we once again flood the emergency rooms of America with people who otherwise would have had health care coverage under the Affordable Care Act. If we begin simultaneously to defund the community health centers across the country and their ability to provide health care, then what we have is a cascading impact that ultimately hits those people who are the poorest, those people who are the most vulnerable. They are the ones who are caught in the crosshairs of this incredible, almost unbelievable attack which the Republicans are waging upon a healthcare system that has already transformed the lives of 22 million people in the United States.
There's a man I found could bring us all joy. There's a doctor I found could cure the boy. A doctor I found can cure the boy.
Senator Mazie Hirono of Hawaii.
I rise today to urge the Senate to pass the Hirono-Donnelly Amendment to protect Medicare and Medicaid. During his campaign, President-elect Trump made the American people a promise that he will protect Medicare and Medicaid. Today, we are giving Senate Republicans an opportunity to reaffirm this promise to the American people. But I am deeply skeptical that they will do the right thing because they are committed to repealing the Affordable Care Act, which would drastically cut Medicaid funding for the states. And the President-elect's nominee for Secretary of Health and Human Services is